Hi, welcome to this week's Santa Barbara Forum. I'm the guest host, Eric Durak. And this week we have a very interesting show. I'd like to welcome Steve Abbey from SOS Nutrients right here in Santa Barbara. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
You have an interesting product. You have an interesting philosophy. You have an interesting sort of way of looking at stuff. Your company, SOS Nutrients, is a powdered formula that enhances a person's food during the day. Am I correct?
It's really designed to be mixed into a smoothie, and yes, it's my philosophy is that whole foods are really the way of getting nutrition, and the problem with it is finding whole foods in a concentrated enough form where we get enough nutrients, and so. Right. Yeah.
So I'm going to give you some statistics because I'm a public health and exercise and whatever guy and read a lot of research. In 1936, there was a thing that went through Congress that was looking at topsoil and nutrient density, and at that time, they said we have a problem with our topsoil. 1936, before most parents were born. So here we are in almost 100 years later, and you just have to wonder. From what I understand, the nutrients in an orange, it has about only 30% of the vitamin C that it did 50 years ago, something like that. And we can, because you have nutrient depletion, right? So that's pretty much what your formula is trying to do. It's trying to enhance what people have. They like oranges, fiber and all the other things with them, but you're trying to enhance the vitamin and nutrient intake along with fruits and vegetables that people are already eating. So, my first question is, why is everyone in such a state of nutrient deficiency? And I know what your answer is going to be, McDonald's.
Well, that's one of them, but when you bring up an orange and you say it's 30% of what it was, and you're talking about the 1936 where it was brought up onto the Senate, it's Senate document 264.
Something, yeah.
And basically what they were talking about is how nutrient deficient the soils had become, and therefore the plants that were grown on there were nutrient deficient, and it has gotten much worse. Right. So you just said 30%, but it actually depends. There are oranges that are picked green, put into a warehouse and kept there for a year or two, and then they're gassed and brought back to a full orange color, and they have zero vitamin C in them. So it depends on the quality of the orange. So it can be really bad. So to answer your question, yeah, our foods and our food supply as a whole has become very different. I'll give you an example of something. If you look at chicken from 1896, the USDA put out a thing saying it's 1.8 grams of fat per 100 grams. Recently, it was 23 grams of fat. So that's over a 10-fold increase in the fat content of chicken. So what you're looking at is a complete change. So when people are talking about a paleo diet, that's not, when you're eating chicken today, it's not like what they were eating,
What if you grew your own chickens, or raised your own chickens?
Well, then you're theoretically, and if they're out and they're, scratching and things like that for their nutrients, and they're not being fed specific things, and they're not given hormones and all that, then it's much more.
Yeah, I grew up, my grandmother had a farm in mid-Michigan, and she raised her own chickens for eggs, and so I knew what she fed them. They were always outside in the spring, summer. It was very interesting then today. I mean, the documentaries we see on some of this stuff is just crazy. Yeah. So you and I spoke a few days ago before the show and tried to get our questions ready and all that stuff. And one of the things we talked about was the quality of vitamin supplements. And you have issues with certain brands, and we'll throw out Trader Joe's because I'm sure what they do is they just get something from another company and just put their brand name on it. So based on what you have and based on what most people take vitamins because they think they're enhancing their health. And you said to me the other day that, like with the vitamin C tablets with ascorbic acid, we got into a discussion about that. Elaborate a little bit more on when I go to Trader Joe's as a consumer and what I'm actually getting with those.
Well, to be quite honest, I don't know about Trader Joe's specifically, but almost all supplements, if you're talking about vitamin C, and this is kind of across the board, but if you're talking about vitamin C, almost everything is ascorbic acid or calcium ascorbate or liposomal vitamin C, but in essence, they're all based on the same thing. It's ascorbic acid. And the ascorbic acid used to be made out in a lab in New Jersey, and that's now been gone over to China. So 95% roughly of all the vitamin C in the world, or ascorbic acid, is made over in China. And the way that it's done is it takes high fructose corn syrup, they put it under incredible pressure, incredible heat, they then do an acetone wash and a hydrochloric acid neutralization. And in the end, you have a molecule that is identical to what you find in nature, but by itself, it will not cure scurvy. It has no vitamin activity, and that's the problem. On my website, I have a study where it compares dietary vitamin C in the form of whole foods compared to supplemental vitamin C, and they're talking about heart disease risk. Mm-hmm. And as people had more and more supplementation, it moved them faster towards heart disease, and the ones that were taking natural from diet, they was actually had a very protective effect. Mm-hmm. So it's a different thing in how it operates in the body, and that is the reason why I choose to use whole foods as opposed to a synthetic vitamin.
And we're going to get into that in a minute or so here with a slide presentation that you brought, which I'll have Michael cue up here in just a second. How did you start your company? You're a local guy. We just found out you're a local guy. So how did you start a nutrition company in Santa Barbara?
You mean how did I start it, or why did I start it?
Why did you start it first?
So I started it, and this is a little bit in my presentation, but why did I start it is because I had some health issues about 25 years ago. And so I started going and trying to figure out how to solve those, because it didn't seem to have an easy way of doing it with the medical world. So I went and started looking into it, and then I became fascinated by what I was finding. I started looking into other things that I didn't have, like heart disease, like cancer, autoimmune conditions, and I found this stuff that just seemed amazing in terms of preventative and treatment for all of the above. So the more I looked into it, the more I got excited about it, but it wasn't being translated into the outside world. So I then had some friends that got very sick and ended up dying, and I was very disturbed by what I saw. That it was so hard for them to have real nutrition. So in the end, I decided to put this together and make it so that people had access to this. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we talked about the other day was how and where you get your nutrients. You scour lots of countries and try to get what you consider to be the best quality. And before you answer that, is that on your slide presentation?
No.
Okay, so let's talk about that, and then we'll jump into the slides. So you talked about 3 or 4 different kinds of nutrients and where you get them. So what I'm trying to do again is really go whole foods. So when I'm trying to get iodine into this, I went to and got 3 kelps from Icelandic organic kelps and standardized it to 3,000 parts per million. I shouldn't go into that kind of depth, but bottom line is to get the iodine, it was from a blend of 3 organic kelps. And why Iceland? Because it's so far away from any industrial pollutants. I have a blend of berries for the vitamin C, with most of that coming from acerola cherry. And all of these are freeze-dried organic. And the reason freeze-dried is because it retains all the nutrients comparatively to, say, air drying. Mm-hmm. And then I have a blend of 7 mushrooms that are from the United States. I have turmeric that's from India. I have baobab that's from Africa. So, and you know, it took a lot. It took me 3 years to put this together. It was not an easy thing. Mm-hmm. And finding all these for specific reasons to really try and cover all these things that the human body needs. So that's what I did. Okay. Well, let's Michael, let's jump into the first slide here. And I'm actually going to tell Kristen, you don't have to do the things now. We'll call you because she'll be standing there for 30 minutes. So anyway, so let's jump into the slide number 1 here. Can smoothies change your life? You know, a lot of people are having breakfast, which is a smoothie as opposed to the bacon and eggs, and unless you're an IHOP fan. And Michael, let's jump into the next slide. Thank you. And that would be me. And with the smoothies, you do it every day, right? I mean,
Yeah,
this is your breakfast, right?
Well, I do it 5 to 6 days a week, and that's what I recommend for people to do this. Because what I'm trying to do is I don't need to have it every day, but I like the consistency of 5 to 6 days a week. And it's not, well, I'll kind of go into that here, but I think pretty much every day or close to it.
Okay, all right. So Michael, let's jump into the next slide. Okay, so the first thing was we have a problem, and so explain what we're looking at right now.
Okay, the problem is we're in the middle of a health crisis, and this is just a demonstration of that. But you could be doing the same thing with autism, diabetes, Alzheimer's.
Right, but this is generally obesity, right?
This
in
is general
1985,
obesity.
you had just a few states that had a little bit of an obesity problem. Let's jump to the next one, Michael. There we go. 10 years later.
What you're looking at, though, is the light blue is 10% or less obese rates. The white was no data, and the next darker blue was 10 to 15%. So you can see in 1995, it had already gone up substantially from 10 to 15 or 15 to 20. Go ahead and
Michael,
next one.
Next America, which is that went from 85 to 95, and then 95 to, is it the 2000?
And then the next one's going to be 2005, and you'll see then it jumping up again.
Yeah, and this is a pretty famous series of slides in terms of
and yeah, you can
crazy that is.
So you'll see that it's now 20 to 25 or 25 to 30 and even 35 and above. So that's what's happened. And as of right now, according to the CDC, it's 41.9% of Americans are obese. Now, bear that in mind, in 1900s, it was less than 1%.
Yeah.
So
700,000 die annually of heart disease.
So yeah,
That's
this
just
is
an insane
this
statistic.
is insane number. And this is totally preventable, in my opinion. Go ahead and do the next one,
Next slide, Mike. Because when I was in college, I believe, a long time ago, but it was like 300% or 300,000 people, so it's essentially doubled. And 40% of Americans will have cancer. If you're a man, it's 1 in 2 in your lifetime, and I think woman 1 in 3 for certain types of cancers.
It's close to that. It's a little less than 1 in 2 for men, and it's a little more than 1 in 3 for women. And what it is 40% of Americans, if you look at everybody, are expected to get an invasive form of cancer, not skin cancer.
Next slide,
but an invasive
Michael.
form. And here's the strange thing. The problem is basically right in front of our face. The solution
Right in
is.
front of our plate.
And the solution really is our whole foods. I mean, that is what, at least from what I can see from all the data, it's very...
What our grandparents used to eat every day.
What our grandparents ate as organic foods. Now, what you're looking at here is the breakdown of the...
Show it again, Michael. There we go.
Of all the nutrients here, and on the far right where it says whole plant foods, it's 12% of our caloric count of our diet.
So we're not getting a lot.
So that's not processed white grains. Now, just go ahead and click through this. This is a series of studies that looked at in Tehran University, one of the most prestigious universities, medical universities over there, and they looked at the highest percentage compared to the lowest percentage of whole plant foods. And you have 92% reduction in breast cancer, 66% in obesity, 91%.
That's pretty impressive.
Incredible numbers.
Well, and if you look at diabetes, that's pretty much a food issue anyway. It's a food and lack of activity.
Huge aspect.
Right,
there are other aspects there, but yes, that is the biggest part of it.
All right, so let's jump into the next one, Michael.
So I'm just going to jump through here. These are just the compared to the recommended amounts that the RDA recommends. Almost nobody is getting the dark green leafies. Only 4% of Americans are getting that. Only 2% are getting orange vegetables. Only 4% are getting legumes. Nobody is really eating their whole foods, and that is a big problem.
They're having their Starbucks coffee in the morning, and they're having. I live right by the In-N-Out Burger, and I can tell you half of Santa Barbara eats there.
Yeah, it's always got a long line, as you well know.
Amazing. And 10 o'clock at night, they have people on the drive-through.
I'm blown away. Yeah,
it is insanity.
It's crazy.
So anyway, next slide, Michael.
So what this is another study that looked at what percentage of Americans are getting these nutrients. Now, I'm just going to pick one: fiber. Only 3% of Americans are seen to get fiber.
It almost seems crazy because
crazy.
you hear all this stuff about fiber on comedy shows and stuff.
But the only place you get fiber is from whole plant foods, and we're not getting our whole plant foods, and that number is already half of what an indigenous culture gets. Wow. So if you look at indigenous cultures, they're having twice the fiber of the recommended amount, and yet only 3% of Americans are getting it.
Next slide, Michael.
Okay. The bigger problem is a lot of the information is really very clear. There are just strong agendas pushing it around and gets it very confusing.
Yeah, after the slide presentation is done, we'll have a little bit more in depth, but I want you to, this is what medicine has told us. You can get things from a pill when in reality, most of the healing comes from the foods.
Yeah, and that is my whole point. So to me, people are told you can get your nutrition from a pill, but which pill? Which form, which company, how much, what are the downsides, what binders are it with, et cetera, et cetera.
And all right, so I'm going to jump in here. Your SOS Nutrients is a solution because you know that Americans don't have a huge attention span on this of one nutrient. You're putting that right in there so they can just put a scoop in, mix their vegetables, and you know that they're going to get most of what they need.
Well, the reason why I did what I did is mine is very comprehensive. I mean, it's whole food. So that's the big difference. I have a prebiotic, I have a probiotic, I have a mushroom blend, I have a greens blend, I have a berry blend. I have the nutrients based on like the iodine, as I said, is from kelp, the vitamin C, there's zinc from a guava leaf extract, et cetera, et cetera. And so what I've tried to do is really cover it so then if they mix it into an already healthy smoothie, you now have a game-changing thing. So even if you are eating an In-N-Out burger, at least you're getting a lot of your nutrition covered, and you're way ahead of the average American.
Right. All right, next slide, Michael.
So I just talked about how the percentage of whole plant foods, how much they matter. Like it's important to have a good percentage of your diet.
Some people may need more selenium than something else. Most people need vitamin D, but does everyone need to have green tea? Maybe, maybe not, but it's in there anyway, right?
Well, so the reason why I put green tea in there is because the studies that are coming out on green tea and things like breast cancer are so compelling. Yeah. That, in my opinion, it had to be in there. Yeah. So, and mushrooms, why is that in there? Because the studies that have been coming out on
40 years, right.
Yeah.
All right, Michael, next slide.
Okay, so this is a study, and I'm just gonna, you know what, Michael, go to the next one if you would. This is an 82% reduction in breast cancer with vitamin D. And I'm just going to show you.
That was a huge thing with COVID. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, COVID. Goodness. So this is the same. This is what I actually based that other pretty slide on. And this is the actual thing. You can just see a stepwise approach down. And so this is anthocyanin, which is the purple-blue pigment in berries and eggplant and plums.
Okay, so 47%. Who doesn't like to eat blueberries?
Exactly, but we're not eating very many of them.
This is crazy.
So selenium, this was a study out of the University of Arizona that was stopped early because they had such a reduction in the cancer rate. It was a unique product. It's in mine as well, but it was published in JAMA. And it was stopped early because it felt it was unethical not to give it to the placebo group.
Right. Okay.
This is, again, what we were talking about with green tea and mushrooms. They just had such an impact on breast cancer. So go ahead and go to the next one.
Next one, Michael. And, okay, all right. Live TV.
So why am I doing this? You kind of asked me that before.
Right, and I wanted you to elaborate
so
a bit more.
I'm going to show you another slide, and it's what I originally started looking into it for, and it's psoriasis. So Michael, next slide. So that is what my skin looked like for many years. And so what I did is, and Michael, go ahead and take us to the next one. So what I did is I put together a whole nutrition panel, including what I use here.
Right.
Now that's not what solved this.
But that's pretty much an after photograph.
That's an after photograph. And so what I did is I did that as a base of really strong nutrition, and then I just targeted it with nutraceuticals that are been shown to help psoriasis. So between the two, over the course of 3.5 months, it went away. And now it takes something to keep that. Psoriasis is not an easy thing, and there hasn't been as much research as, say, hypertension or diabetes or heart disease. There's so much more data for that. So if somebody wants to treat that sort of thing, there's a ton more data. But psoriasis, there still is enough to actually do something, as you can see.
Right, and you don't need to have 1,000 studies to say something, when 3 or 4, and your actual, I'm going to call yours a clinical case study, is very compelling.
It's an anecdotal case, but it's a compelling case.
Right, and like I say, because it was pretty severe.
It was very severe, as you can see.
Next slide, Michael.
Okay, so basically, what is my mission? My mission is to make really rock star nutrition as convenient as, fast foods. That is really, I think, this could potentially really help people, and I'm excited about it.
The interesting thing is that no one wants to be, no one in your position wants to be compared with fast food, but to have something as easy is the business model, because like I say, people will sit in line for 30 minutes at In-N-Out Burger. I mean, they'll literally will clog the street.
I've been by there.
I live by there. So and then but just mixing this up would just take a few minutes a day. So it's really that what we call in the health behavior thing, one small change.
Yes. Well, the thing is about this is, from my perspective, it's not as easy as taking a multivitamin, but this actually provides tremendous amount of nutrition, and you're going to have results. That's the thing that I'm so excited about, is even if you didn't do my product in it, if you did a super healthy smoothie, this is an amazing amount of nutrition. And then you fill in all those gaps with vitamin D and K2 and vitamin B12 and iodine. I mean, now you're talking about rock star nutrition.
All right, let's go to the next slide, Michael.
Okay, so basically, the reason why this isn't being done, there are many reasons. I mean, there's supply chain issues because it's very hard to find this stuff. There's shelf life issues. There's, they're just bulk issues. There are taste issues. But the real reason is because of cost. So, Michael, next slide. So you'll see, I pay 45 times more for my zinc.
Can you go back, Michael? He did the last time.
No, but I pay 45 times more for my zinc. I pay 35 times more for my iodine. I pay, then let's say potassium iodide, which is in everything. I pay 20 times more for my vitamin C than say ascorbic acid. So it's very expensive, and that has been the biggest issue.
Right, but I'm of the adage in my lifetime that you can pay me now or you can pay me later, and the cost. That
you're preaching to the choir.
35% of cancer patients mortgage their homes to pay for their cancer treatment. Yeah. I don't think you had to mortgage your home to pay for your supplements. No. And the thing is, it's more expensive. And we live in Santa Barbara. We shop at farmers markets, and we know the food there is a little more expensive. But I'd rather eat it. I'd rather spend the money on that than waste the gas sitting in line at In-N-Out Burger. All right, we won't go back, Michael. We'll just go to the next slide.
Okay, so what you're looking at here on the left side of the screen is on my recipe section, which I have some smoothies that are going to be brought over here in a minute, are the whole 9 yards, which is one that's full of all these great things. It's like purple cabbage, and I know it sounds crazy, but purple cabbage, greens in the form of spinach and kale, and carrots and blueberries. So all these nutrients.
Hold that up.
Right?
Thanks, Michael.
But you can see that there isn't very much selenium, zinc, or
right.
iodine.
So in general, when you put the SOS formula, you go from 50% to 2. So you get a 2.5. You're getting almost all of those are well above 100% of what a person would need in one day. just by adding your formula to a regular smoothie.
Well, some of them are 100%, some are not, and there's a reason for that. Like, you know,
Well, potassium seems to be not a big increase.
Yeah, because the product only has, I think, 8% of your daily amount of potassium. It takes a lot to get potassium. It's the biggest mineral out there, so it's hard to get potassium.
Well, I always was told bananas, you know, high in potassium.
Well, you have a banana in the smoothie that's coming,
Right.
so you'll taste it, but it's actually not one of the highest sources.
Right.
Greens are a great
are the
source.
highest, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
okay. All right, next slide, Michael.
so this to me is what a multivitamin should, in my opinion, should look like. So you have this tremendous amount of nutrition.
Michael, let's go to camera 3 here and just sort of look at what you have in your smoothie right there. You've got on the bottom, you've got.
So what I have in here, which is the smoothie that's coming, that's already blended up, are greens. I have purple potatoes. Purple cabbage. I have.
Point to it. Point to the cabbage.
So the cabbage is right here. You have carrots, both purple and orange. You have the blueberries there. You have bananas.
You got some stalk in there as well too. Come on in, young lady.
Okay.
You are an angel. You've been standing out there.
Thank you, sweetie.
ma'am. And so, then the blend looks greenish because it's got a lot of greens in it.
Yep.
And the speckles in there are blueberries, seeds.
Blueberries are most of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Blueberries and a little.
Now, so how many things do you put in your blender before you put your mix in there? So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 types of greens. You've got cabbage, which is a purple. You've got a orange, which is a carrot. But you could also put, what's the other orange fruit that we have every morning?
The orange fruit, like a persimmon?
Like a persimmon, right.
Yeah.
We have persimmons almost every day. And then so you got blueberries, you've got, bananas, not very colored, but Jerry French is a local dietitian and a foodie. And Jerry will tell you that if you want to have a really robust food, you got to have as many colors as you can.
I agree with
not
that
just
completely.
green peppers, but red peppers and yellow peppers, which we all have at the market. You know what I mean? So all of that stuff is there.
It's all there.
And it tastes better in a salad. I mean, when we cut up a salad almost every night, it's 2 or 3 types of peppers, not just a green pepper. They taste all right, but red ones taste a little different, and yellow ones taste a little different than that.
Exactly. Well, what I keep track of what I kind of have over the course of a week. Right. So I'm having about 5 pounds of fruits, vegetables, and nut butters every week. And that's just a massive amount of nutrition. And then I have this in there as well. So it's a good solid base. It ends up being about 25% of my calories.
And you don't put exactly the same thing in the blender every single day.
No,
bit this
variety.
Day,
you want to mix it up,
and
you also you don't want to become totally sick of one taste. So you kind of want to move it around a little bit. So
does and you have different flavors and tastes in each bag too, because the bags are not the same.
No, these are all identical.
They're all identical. Okay. So, so if I ordered bags, I would get one bag. I would get 5 versions of one bag instead of this one is more of a something blend. This one's more of a something blend. No.
No, these
Everything
are all the same.
So the thing that's going to change every day is what I put in the blender.
Exactly, and I mix it up. And as crazy as it sounds, I put beans in it a lot of times too. Beans are an amazingly healthy food, and most people. Kidney beans, black beans. I know a lot of people don't like soy, but I sometimes put in tofu. Sometimes I put in, campanelli, I think, beans. What are they called?
Oh, yeah.
But I put in various types of beans.
Okay, so does your SOS formula have protein powder in it, or are you just relying on the natural protein from what we have in the blend?
I do not have protein powder in it. I chose not to because most Americans get more than what they need, and there are very few people that don't get adequate amounts of protein. Now, if you're training for a marathon or a bodybuilding contest, that's a different thing.
Right.
Or if you're not eating enough calories, then considering a protein powder. But I didn't want to put it in because once you put in protein powder and somebody doesn't need it, they actually now have to get rid of it. And it becomes something their body has to deal with. So I don't just throw that in. I might at some point have a protein powder. I have very specific ideas about that. but I wouldn't want to put it into a product like this.
Okay. How long does once you open the seal, how long does your meal last, your bag?
Well, I tell people 3 months. Once it's opened, you want to consume it relatively quickly.
Right, they're not that big. It doesn't look like that's...
If it's unopened, you have about a year.
Okay.
So it's not a huge amount of time, but it's enough time.
Okay. Well, it's like when you can
Exactly.
vegetables thing, they have a shelf life too.
I don't have any preservatives in here, but it is a dry powder, so it lasts a lot longer. But it doesn't last forever.
Right. Okay. We're going to try this at the end.
Okay.
So your original theory here is, and do we have some other slides we want to go through?
Nope, that was it.
Okay, great. All right. So your original thing is whole plants are better. Do we need, and I'm going to just stay with United States. I don't really know what other people eat. I hear stories about people in countries that, and I'll take like France. They still smoke cigarettes. They have coffee for 3 hours in the afternoon, but they're reasonably healthy people because they're a little bit more active, and they do eat more, I think, fruits and vegetables than Americans do. And again, they don't, every country has McDonald's and all these other things, but they seem to eat less of that kind of food than we do. So I think that if you're preaching here, which I know you're not, but we as a nation really have to think hard about, a Starbucks on every corner type thing. And there mostly is a coffee shop now on every corner. It's crazy now.
We've got some real problems. And the thing is, we're so close to it, it's hard to see.
Yeah.
But we've got huge problems. And if we don't deal with them, it's already biting us, but it can get a lot worse. And we're on a trajectory that's not good. And I for one, am concerned.
Well, my first exposure to the vitamin world was in the mid-'80s. There was a company it was a multi-level marketing company called United Sciences of America. And they had all these celebrities and all this stuff. And so I was really kind of interested in vitamins. And I have been over the last 40 years. I take vitamins regularly. And it's interesting, when we had our conversation the other day, I looked at one of the vitamins.
Did you just go, uh-oh, it's got ascorbic acid?
No, it wasn't that. It was the other things that they did put in there that are completely should not be in a vitamin. And I didn't really even pay attention. And it's turmeric. It was the turmeric we used from Trader Joe's. And I'm like, and I know that they're putting this in A as a filler, and B because the turmeric will sort of cake a little bit. They want to keep it sort of powdery. So they'll put these things in there that have nothing to do with vitamins. And I'm just looking at it, it's like, I didn't even take it this morning. I'm just like, it's just, that's sort of, my heart wasn't in it, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I have my omega-3s, I have, my sort of bulletproof coffee, and I have very little coffee because I'm not a coffee guy. But it's interesting that, Dave Asprey, who's the gentleman who invented bulletproof coffee, said, I really like coffee, but in general, it's not that great for you. Mostly not that great. Even though everyone drinks it, I think it's the most consumed beverage in the world. But what he did is he said, because he also had health issues. And so he said, well, if I can put omega-3s and if I can put, these other kinds of things in it, he said, it's going to be like a super nutrient type coffee. And for the most part, he was right. And he's got his own formulas and stuff. So he's trying to make something really healthy out of something that's not too healthy. I'm not saying that coffee is terrible for people. There are some people who say you should never drink coffee, ever. But because it does have antioxidants, it doesn't have any calories, etc. But it is also very acidic, and some people, however much they drink it, I think it has to do with volume.
I think it depends on the person, because some people have a hard time dealing with it. It actually attacks their adrenals, and that's why, like, if I have coffee, I love the stuff. I don't have it very often, because if I have it, the next time I stand up, I'll get a head rush. And what that means is I don't know if any of your viewers have had that, but if they are, that means it is slowing down your adrenals to the point where the adrenaline that your body puts into your system to keep your blood pressure high enough when you stand up so that you don't pass out, it's not putting out enough. So
interesting.
So I still have some every once in a while, but it's not great for me, and I know it.
Mm-hmm. So have you done any work on your supplement specifically? You have a wonderful case study on your psoriasis. and you probably have some other case studies of people who you've given it to and you've sort of watched their progression. Has anyone said to you, "Hey, Steve, let's test your subject, your supplement with these subjects over here with this particular disease"?
Well, I'm doing a small pilot study with Dr. Scott Saunders here in town, and we're testing all these people. We're going to look at their micronutrient level, their inflammation level using high sensitivity C-reactive protein. We're going to be looking at their antioxidant levels. So I'm expecting a pretty substantial impact, but we'll see how that goes. It's only going to be a 6-week study, so it's not a massive amount of time, but there's a lot of things to really look at, and we'll get some really good data. And so I'm excited to see it. I'm going to put it out there for other people to see, good, bad, or ugly, whatever comes back.
Well, and also you want to see a trend, because when I started doing diabetes research and exercise, we did 4-week studies and 6-week studies, and we actually had pretty good results. But when we extended them to 3 months, those results got a little bit better. So,
well, I've worked with people, and when I say worked with, I've talked with and given them guidance on diabetes and hypertension, and have had tremendous success. Now, it's not just, say, this product, but like one person that I put on that had a 9.5 A1C, which is raging diabetes.
Pretty good. Yeah.
And her numbers became so low, I told her she needed to back off. But she was doing other things. I mean, she was doing intermittent fasting. So you know what that is.
Yeah.
But basically, she would start eating at 8 a.m. in the morning, and she would be done by 5 p.m. And then she would go until 8 a.m. again. So she was doing that. That is amazing for things like diabetes.
Yeah.
She was doing all sorts of things. She was having 2 smoothies a day. That was her breakfast and lunch. I was also having her do a whole bunch of things like additional turmeric, additional amla powder, et cetera, et cetera. There are all these things that have been shown to have amazing results for diabetes.
Well, we had an interesting conversation a couple of days ago on the phone, and one of the topics that came up was supplement adulteration. And I want you sort of to explain to our audience, bad batches of supplements, why things are adulterated. Why, I mean, the industry needs to sort of clean itself up a little bit. So explain adulteration.
Well, I'll say the industry has started that process. It is not perfect. The reason why it took me so long to get this product out is one of the main companies I was planning on using in this product, I started to have a suspicion that they were adulterating the product. So I took their material and sent it to my lab. Unfortunately, they said that they were not able to tell if it was being adulterated or not. So then I went to several other labs, and then in the end I had to send it to the University of Georgia, their forensic anthropology department, to test it. And then he came back to me and said, yes, this is clearly being adulterated. This is the reason why.
And an adulteration is a filler, additive, or something that has no business being there.
It's what it was, is these were whole food nutrients, and they were being spiked. What that means is they were spiking them with something that was clearly not from the whole food, the original thing. And as it turns out, I went in and read their patent, and in their patent it says clearly that if it doesn't reach the RDA amount, this is again right in their patent, all in black and white, they can add additional material not part of the original extract to meet the RDA.
Right.
I mean,
well,
I don't know how much more obvious you can get than that.
I know a few compounding labs, and I actually 25 years ago was interested in developing an immune system vitamin with a compounding lab. And he got bags of this and bags of this and bags, but one of the things he had was a filler. And he says, because you're only going to put in a certain amount of things, and when you have the gel cap, it's only half full, so you got to fill the rest of it with something. And like, why don't you just fill it with more nutrients? He said, that's not how it works. So literally, and this was a long time ago, but many vitamins that are the gel caps do have something in there that is a filler. I don't know what type of substance it is. It might not be, quote, bad for you, but it certainly isn't a nutrient. But, anyway.
Yeah, there are definitely problems with that, and the binding agents that make it sometimes very hard for somebody to actually get the nutrients out of the thing as well. But they have their own issues, and people can have reactions to them.
What are most people deficient in? If you had to pick the top two, I mean, vitamin D has been getting a lot of play with COVID these days. Well, the sickest people with COVID had the lowest vitamin D levels.
Well, clearly vitamin D is on that list. There's no doubt about it. And it's unfortunate because we live in Santa Barbara. So you make vitamin D from being in the sun, as I'm sure you know. But if you don't get it, if you're staying inside all the time, you're going to need to take a supplement. And as I showed on that slide, the difference in terms of all sorts of issues when somebody is high in vitamin D compared to low is drastic. So vitamin D would be on that list. Fiber would be on that list, clearly. And then what would be another one? Vitamin K2 maybe.
Is vitamin C still an issue? Not because people might not get enough of it, because they're getting more ascorbic acid as opposed to a natural form of C.
Well, we're
whole
getting
food type of C.
Yeah, we're getting plenty of vitamin C to not get things like scurvy. But the thing is what is the optimal amount? Are we getting that? Absolutely not. Because we're showing benefit in these studies, well over 200 milligrams a day, and yet the RDA for men is 90 milligrams, and for women it's 75. And 43% of Americans don't get that. And so what percent?
Crazy.
What percent are getting to 200? Yeah. Like it's got to be 5 or 10% maybe.
And it's interesting that there was a report on 60 Minutes 10 years ago about a guy, I think in Australia, who was dying of something, very, very acute disease, and he was on death's doorstep, and his family kept saying, "We want him to take vitamin C. We heard that this type of vitamin C, intravenous, whatever," and they kept, no. And after a while, I don't know what happened, but they started giving him, and they were giving him 5 to 6 grams a day, and then literally within 10 days, his eyes opened. He was starting to become, you know what I mean? And then within a couple weeks, he walked out. And so,
well, that's using vitamin C. That is ascorbic acid that they're using, and it is acting like a drug in that way. And what they're often, when they're doing that, they're also putting in a plasma with high oxygen, because what it does is it creates hydrogen peroxide on the site of the cancer site. So, but I don't think there are many places doing that anymore. But
yeah, it was an old thing. But like I say, I actually mentioned the group in Detroit that was doing David Bronstein. And his group did multivitamins for COVID. And he found the vitamin C, the vitamin D, zinc was the other ones. And he said, hey, if you can just really pump these in when people are starting to be symptomatic, he said, you can really make a big difference.
Reduce the mortality rate drastically.
Right, but his was like, early intervention. And of course, the paper that he published in the summer of 2000 was actually retracted the next year, which this is the problem. I don't want to get into it in this discussion, but we're seeing a war on nutrients in this country. They
won't get an argument from me there.
Right, and like I say, we see this now with these vitamin studies with COVID, but you can go back, and we had mentioned N-acetylcysteine that the FDA has tried to regulate as a drug. And they did the same thing with vitamin C in the 70s with Cameron and Linus Pauling, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're all constantly. And I said, and it's a very, very frustrating thing. There's a big nutrition expo every March in Anaheim. Is your product a part of that?
I am going to sign up for that. I have not signed up yet, but I'm planning on being there.
Yeah,
so you're talking about the Natural Products Expo.
Natural Expo West, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's March 9th of next year, and I'm planning on going.
Yeah, there are a few nutrition people I know from Santa Barbara that go there every year. So we got about 15 minutes to go, and I've got a couple questions left to go here. Where do you see your company in the next 3 to 5 years? And I'm going to preface that by saying, where are you at now? Are you in all the health food stores? Are you, do you have contracts with somebody?
Not in all the health food stores yet. In fact, I'm not in any stores. I launched October 20th, so it's only been about 6 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this is brand spanking new.
So I'm like the
guy
here.
You are the guy. You're the guy. And where do I see it? I'm excited about this, and I'm curious to see if other people resonate with the fact that to me, people are craving real information on real nutrition. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard. There's so many competing information, and the truth is I don't know if my voice is going to be heard and if it's going to resonate with people. But I think it's going to be successful. Even if another company takes this over and gets it out there, I don't really care, as long as this essentially is able to be made out there
Right.
where people can get their hands on something that can really impact their health.
Well, and I want to, interesting enough, when I talk about how the growth of, where I see your sort of growth, 30 years ago I was on the health advisory board for the Balance Bar Company. And they started right here in Carpinteria. And they grew, and they got into some health food stores, and they got, something else, and then they grew.
did very well.
They did very well, but here's the thing. They grew organically, no pun intended, by going to the health food sector, which was great. And then they got a contract with some big health food chain. So all of a sudden, they're doing really well. And then they had the opportunity to buy Jenny Craig food bars, if I can remember my history on this. So all of a sudden, they were even more well known. So they had this product line now. And then they got an offer from Kraft Foods. And from a financial standpoint and a scalability standpoint, it was the best decision they ever made. Everybody who worked for the company got stock options. They did really well. It was fantastic. I wouldn't buy a Balance bar today if it was the only bar on the shelf.
Oh, really?
I would not buy it.
Why is that?
Because it's terrible. Because I remember one of the nutrients, they had a thing about oils. And they said, well, listen, if you want to have shelf life, you have to use an oil that doesn't go rancid quicker. And so they went with the cheaper oil. And they knew that, and they didn't want to, but you have to make decisions with that kind of a product. But now most of the bars are smaller. All of the products in there there's no organic anything in there. It's not a very good product. In my opinion, I'm not the world's expert on it, but I was very close to the company. I saw the raw ingredients. I used to go down to their shop in Carp. So.
Well, I was originally going to do this in a nutritional bar, so somebody would just eat a bar and that would be their nutrition. But I chose not to, because every time I went to a manufacturer to do that, they would put in all these fats and sugars, and I was like, no, that's not what I said.
Right, exactly.
So in the end, I decided to make it this way, so it was a powder form that I could totally control everything, that it would last, didn't have binding agents and all this other stuff, and then somebody can really mix it with all these fresh ingredients that then they're getting a ton of nutrition without even this, and then this just fills in those gaps. So that was the reason why I went that way.
Excellent. And from what I see, because I go to Sprouts, I go to Trader Joe's, I go to the nutrition shop out in Goleta, and I go to it's the one out in La Cumbre, the big shopping center up there, and I look to see what products that they have. And I'm always trying new protein bars. Most of them I don't like. They're dry. It's hard to swallow. The peanut butter just doesn't taste good. The chocolate is a little too sweet. Like you say, they have a little bit more of the stuff. And anyway, so it does get to be a little bit frustrating in terms of, because you have to balance taste. And you have to balance.
And also with bars, there are all these things. You have to hold it together.
Yeah.
So as soon as you have that, so if people want it to taste good and it needs to last a long time on the shelf,
Absolutely.
You've got real problems to make that.
I know.
Yeah, so that they've got their, the reason why I backed out is because it was just too much work to make that happen.
It's a very frustrating thing now. And now there are some really good bars. And as a matter of fact, locally, right before COVID, I wanted to have the creator of the Ivan Bar here in Santa Barbara on the show, and then COVID happened, and I have to start calling people back. But their bar is.
I should call him. I've tried that bar. I liked it.
It's a good bar, and it's well made, and that's the thing. And there are certain things that they have to have the consistency of the bar without having to put the fillers and the sugars and all of the other things in there. But I just think that your product is pretty standalone in that. People, over 2 or 3 generations, probably 4 generations, people said, well, cook the eggs in the morning. I'll have mine over easy, or I'll have mine hard boiled, or whatever. And you got the bacon for breakfast. And then you have 3 or 4 slices of toast for breakfast. And, your glycemic index is just, whatever. And I think that when people, and there's one other thing in here, convenience. You can blend this pretty easily. And a friend of mine here in town, and I'm going to plug him, Dr. Ernie Farrell, is a local chiropractor. I was at his house a few weeks ago on a Sunday afternoon. He's blending for the week. He will literally put blending things, put them in some containers, and stick them in the freezer or something for the week, so we can just take them to the office. And
That's what I do. I make a huge thing like this, and then I put it in. I have a big smoothie that day, and then 2 of them for the next 2 days, and
exactly.
that's a great
Especially
way
if you're
to go.
traveling or something. No, like I say, for traveling, because I know I'll be my company is growing this next year, and I know I'll be traveling more, and I see that in my bag. I just see that in my bag right now, because I try to put bars and stuff, and it's fine, but you know, and you don't have to have one of those on the airplane. You could have a bar on the, but when you get to your destination, a lot of these places have little kitchens in there now, so you don't have to blend it in a blender, unless it's sort of pre-made or whatever, but you can just use that. You can mix that with rice milk or water or any of those other things too, right? So you're getting a percentage of that. So you're
But the one thing is, when you do make it like I do, in a big thing, not everybody loves the taste the second or third day. So you have to try that once and see if you like it.
But it's also an acquired taste. You know, the first time I tasted beer, I didn't like it at all.
Neither did I.
Right.
But I figured that one out.
Well, but and like I say, I only drink one. I'll drink non-alcoholic beers when I'm on the road, because I don't want the alcohol. But I have one brand of beer normally. I'll taste others, but I usually stick with one brand. And a lot of things are an acquired taste.
Yeah.
And I would imagine this is going to be too. We'll call it the gourmet nutrient for Santa Barbara. So, okay, so all right, so where do you see your company in 3 to 5 years? I mean, so obviously you'd like to get some contracts and, you know, some...
Well, I see it having this next year as being a real time of communication, and really building the infrastructure and building our infrastructure, and really, so I see this as becoming a much bigger market. Right now, very few supplements are whole foods or whole, you know, real nutrition, in my opinion. And I think that's going to start catching on. I think people are really going to start craving that, because they're going to see that there's such a drastic difference. So I think that this is the beginning of something, but it's not just having whole foods, it's having something that's comprehensive. So you have the prebiotics, so you're feeding the gut bacteria. You're having the probiotics, so you put them in, but you also, those prebiotics are going to keep them healthy. And the smoothie itself has got a whole bunch of prebiotics in the form of fiber, right?
Well, you know, because I run these ideas through my head, like, you know, like flight attendants. Oh my God, you know, flight attendant unions, you know, the Flight Attendants Association, traveling, some travelers, you know, to speak at conferences where people, you know, not just travel to go to the conference, but it's for like the traveling thing, like the George Clooney movie, Up in the Air. The guy's flying everywhere. It's perfect. That's his meal right there, because he, you know, his character was a little chubby. So, okay. So, do you think that your company could be like the top company, sort of like what Balance Bar did? At one time, they were the top of the heap.
Absolutely. But what I probably am going to do is hopefully team with a larger company to bring it out, but keep control so that I don't lose control, because I don't want to get rid of a whole bunch of the ingredients because they're too expensive. I want to keep this. I want to continue to take this product. So, if somebody else took control, so as long as I have control, I want to partner with the right company and really bring this out. And to me, because it's not about just getting it out to, you know, a few hundred or few thousand people. I want to get it out to a large group of people.
Well, you want millions of people. So Bill Gates is now the largest farm owner in America.
I know.
So is that,
there's a reason for that.
Those, well, I don't want to get into the political thing about this, but when you have a nutrient company and you want the soil has to be good, the cultivation has to be good, the tilling has to be good, what you feed the soil, if you're putting certain things in there that we'll call it, you know, good things, manure, whatever, like my grandmother used to do. She had the world's best compost pile. So those are the things that really feed the nutrients in the soil that allow the plants to grow well in the first place. Is that going to be a problem for you with your Iceland and your turmeric from India and these other places? I mean, you mentioned at the beginning of the show supply chain. Oh my God, that's going to be a huge thing in the next couple of years.
So that is going to be probably my biggest issue. I would say the cost is a big issue, but the supply chain is likely to be, because I'm getting it from all over the place. I really chose things that a lot of them are very boutique. So let's say I started really, started selling tens of millions of dollars. I don't know if they will sustain it. I'm going to really have to look at that.
Well, so let me ask you a question, because we have enough time for a few more questions here. The turmeric from India, that's a long way to get turmeric. It's got to get on a plane, or however they're going to ship it to you, or containers on these big transport ships. Could you work with the company in India and bring them to Santa Barbara?
So turmeric's not going to be a big issue because there are many companies that make turmeric.
Okay.
And there are many good companies that make turmeric. So it's not like some items, like I keep going back to that kelp. It's not that there aren't other ones, but if you want to have kelp that's far away from industrial centers and you want to have it standardized, there aren't many that are out there. In fact, and you want it organic, you're really limited to a very few companies.
Could you do that with hydroponics or something? Could you grow kelp in big things down in Carpinteria? You know what I mean? Something like that?
Yeah, you could do. You can do anything. It's just a matter of how much time do you have.
Well,
in
I
a day.
imagine when you hit 10
I'm
million
already busy.
Right, when you have 10
Let's put it
million
that
in
way.
sales, though, you can think about those kind of things. Because that's how
Absolutely.
when you scale and do those other kind of things.
Once this gets to a certain level, all the items will have a very specific route. But there will also be more products. I have other products on the that are clearly would be good to have coming on.
Okay. So where now we've been doing the runner here the entire show. We're going to publish on YouTube and Facebook and all this other kind of stuff, and we'll try to get you a copy, and you can do your own promotion on this. But where can people get a hold of you now?
My website, sosnutrients.com.
Because it's a website product right now.
It's a website product. It will be in stores, but it won't be in stores until 2023.
Okay. Well, yeah. But okay. So and we're going to do in the next 30 seconds here. We're going to do a taste test. Because again, it's an acquired taste, but this is what people are going to see when they blend it up, unless they have more other colors, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can have it anything. So you can see there are a lot of dark colors in there, and actually, I think there was more green in the one that we made.
Could you put peanut butter in something like that?
Absolutely, but
you want
I put a blend of organic nuts and seeds as a thing, and I always want to have some fat in there because you want to make sure that all the fat soluble vitamins are absorbed.
You could pour an oil in the blender too. You could put an olive oil or something like that.
You could, but that to me is not ideal. That's a refined food. Even olive oil, which is one of the better oils that way. Yeah. But to me, you're stripping out all these good things and just going down to the oil. So to me, I would prefer, and I'm not saying olive oil is horrible or anything, but I would prefer to use like avocado or a nut butter or something like that.
So as we drink up here, what's your website?
sosnutrients.com.
Okay, Steve, Abbey, SOS Nutrients. Cheers.
Cheers, Eric. Thank you very much.